to talk to you guys about the gender binary and hopefully change the way that you look at it. Okay, so as people, we have a lot of skills that we've adapted and evolved over the however many centuries that we've been on this planet. And one of the ones that I'm going to be talking about today is how we classify things. We're constantly classifying things, and even people and situations. So one situation I'll use as an example is you're leaving work on a Friday and you're like, oh man, I'm really hungry. I'm going to go to Burger King and I'm going to get a Whopper. Pretty normal situation. You go into a fast food restaurant. You know how to act because over the years you've learned, I know I go to the register and I order, but how might your actions change if he was in there with you? It might change a little bit because, I mean, hopefully you haven't had experience with armed robbers, but I mean, you know, okay, don't argue with him, don't do anything to make him angry because I'd like to leave the situation alive. But we classify people every day into man or woman, and that tells us how we should treat them. So let's take a look at this person. What do you think automatically? Woman? Yeah, girl. She's sitting pretty femininely. She's got a small watch. She's showing a little bit of midriff. But what about this person? Boy, right? He's got a little bit of goatee, short haircut, kind of looks like Zac Efron, as my sister pointed out. But this is the same person. They're an actor and they play different roles as a man or a woman, and with just a couple different gender cues, your whole perception of them changes, and pretty much how you would meet them and treat them is different. So this starts from when we're really, really little. In fact, there are studies that say that after 24 hours after a child's born, parents already expect different things from a boy and a girl. And I noticed this with my sister. She's a competitive soccer player. She plays goal a lot, and she plays soccer about 5 days a week. So I was at her goalie training one day, and I'm oh, this is a good drill. We can practice this by ourselves. And I go, wow, he's hitting it pretty hard to those boys. And then Sarah steps up, and it's significantly softer. I'm like, oh, man, maybe he's just off. And then I watch again for another round, and the coach is kicking it significantly softer to Sarah than he is to the boys. And I'm like, oh, well, this is a great thing to talk about today, but it's not really great for society because we're conditioned to think that girls are weaker, girls aren't as good at sports, girls are better at English, boys are better at math and science. But that's because we're teaching them that it's that way. People aren't so different that we are innately born with different skills. We develop those skills over and over again throughout reinforcement in social situations. So, groupthink creates gender. I was at a play one evening, and it was called Becoming a Man in 120 Easy Steps. So afterwards, I was talking to the actor, and he was great, and he said, hey, do you want the sticker? And I was like, sure. And the sticker said, groupthink creates gender. So I went and I put the sticker on my car, and I pretty much forgot about it until I was going to pick up one of my friends, and they were like, what is that? That hasn't always been on your car. Groupthink creates gender. What does that mean? And I was like, yeah, it's pretty self-explanatory. Groupthink creates gender. So, how's your day? But then I kept thinking later at home, well, I just put this on my car and I don't really know the backstory. I should look it up. So, thanks to Google definitions, we have groupthink is the practice of thinking or making decisions as a group in a way that discourages creativity or individual responsibility. So let's look at that in the context of gender. The practice of thinking or making a decision as a group. Well, as society, We have definitions of what it means to be a man or a woman, or a boy and a girl. And everyone in that society knows what it means. They know through growing up in that society that if you're a boy, you do this, and if you're a girl, you do that. Though they change over different societies, it's still a group collective consensus that this is what it means to be a boy or a girl. Okay, so if it's that discourages creativity. Absolutely. I mean, think of the people that you know in your life that don't quite fit the narrow confines of gender. They're the little boys who don't like playing sports. They'd rather play house with the girls. I know these little boys. They're most of my friends. And I can tell you that they were teased, and everyone is always trying, well, come on. It'll just be easier if you like to play sports. Maybe you haven't found the right sport. It'll be easier it'll just be easier for you because you won't be teased. And that leads me to discourages individual responsibility, because often the people who are trying to make it easier for them are saying, well, I don't care that you don't like to play sports, but it'll be easier if you like to play sports because then you won't be teased. I don't mind that you don't like to wear makeup, but if you just wear makeup to this night, it might be easier because no one will comment on the fact that you're not wearing makeup. No one's commenting on the fact that you don't like sports. So it just makes life easier, thus discouraging individual responsibility. When Bill Clinton took a trip to Saudi Arabia to talk about technology, and someone was sitting in the audience, I said, excuse me, President Clinton, how can Saudi Arabia compete with America's innovation in technology? And he said, well, you're not using half of your resources because, as many of you probably know, Saudi women have a lot less rights than do Saudi men. And he's saying, if you had a business, and you had a fund that's supposed to be invested, would you only invest half the fund? Because then you're only getting half the returns. If you're investing the whole fund, yeah, it's a greater risk, and social change is a greater risk, but you're getting a greater reward. Your innovation will be greater. But what I think that many people in Western society fail to realize is that we're not using half of our resources. Because as children, and as we grow up into adults, we are taught to suppress half of the human spectrum. Because humans aren't so different that boys do not feel the same emotions as girls. They're just taught not to express those emotions. So when you're talking about being right-brained and left-brained, the ideal is symphony, that both of them work in tandem together, and thus you have the creativity to work outside the box, but you have the analytical skills to make it work today, to make it work now. But I propose that we work towards gender symphony, because if we're not using half of ourselves, we're greatly diminishing our potential to create, to grow. So how do we know that this can even be done? I mean, there are a lot of scientists that are working to prove that gender differences are innate. Boys like to play with trucks and balls, and that is why they're better at spatial skills down the line, and thus better at math, and so on. And girls like to play with dolls because of the hormones they experience in utero. So why are people trying to change it? But we know when we look at people who change their gender, who are transgender or transsexual, that this couldn't be possible if they're innate differences that are biological. Because if they're biological, how could you switch? How could you be raised as a girl and then make the decision to transition and live your life as a boy? It wouldn't be possible because it's biology, it's what's in you. But so we know that it can be possible. So why should it be possible? Or why should we change? Because we don't want another generation growing up only using half of their potential resources. We want to create a society where everyone experiences all of the emotions and can do so freely. They don't have to repress. So how do we do this? Well, there's great broad things that we can do, like a Sesame Street initiative to teach children that they don't have to tease, they don't have to make fun of. But that's far away. That's down the line, and that's a lot of money and time to put in. But what you can do every day is you can take away, you can talk to the little boy and say, hey, it's okay that you want to play house and you don't want to play sports. That's great. I want you to do that because I want you to be happy. You can tell the little girl, you're going to be the best that you can be at sports. And in doing that, they grow up and they don't have, in school even, they don't have the hate for themselves, and so they're not portraying it onto other people. They're not teasing, well, why don't you wear a skirt? Girls wear skirts. Or why don't you play sports? That's what boys do. Why aren't you better at math? They don't have that. They're not forcing that onto other children because they know that they're themselves and that's who they're going to be. So it's okay that other people are themselves. Everyone is supposed to be exactly who they want to be, and that's how society can get great. So you can talk to the kids that are struggling and tell them, be yourself, so that when they're adults, they're not struggling and repressing and have years of therapy. So talk to the little boy who's crying or the little girl who can't get on the sports team.